But Donald Trump, Big T, the T-Dog, the T-Man, he said, tariffs galore. It's the most beautiful word in the language. It's the most beautiful word for the most beautiful world and the most beautiful girl. Tariffs. That's right. Let's take a look at the tariffs that were placed upon Penguin Island and McDonald's Island. Places where we have a tremendous trade deficit with. Now, why am I talking about trade deficits? I'll get to that. I'm spoiling it. Let's talk about this first.
With President Trump's new tariffs, take a look at this map. It shows the countries targeted by the president's trade war. Markets around the world are responding this morning. Our own market here is facing much, much lower.
Yeah, because there is serious concern about the potential shockwave through the global economy and to American consumers' bottom line. We'll be breaking down a potential impact, but first, let's go to our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, at the White House. Good morning, Rachel.
Also, I forgot.
Michael, good morning to you. These tariffs are sweeping and the impact will be widespread. A move that will not only reshape the U.S. economy, but could also shatter relationships with our closest allies as businesses and companies prepare to raise prices on everything from clothing to groceries.
I can't tell. Is this good? Don't forget Mauritius. What do we even buy from them? What about Cambodia? What are we doing? Every country got slapped with a tariff so bad that countries that got 10%, like Turkey, were like, okay, he likes us. Donald Trump is behaving like an abusive husband, okay? Donald Trump is behaving like an abusive father, beating the shit out of everybody, okay? And the ones that only get the backhand one time are going, oh, he must like us a lot. That's the situation in front of us right now. That's what's going on.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
This morning, President Trump dramatically escalating his global trade war, announcing his most sweeping set of tariffs yet on goods from every country that trades with the United States.
This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back.
The president declaring a national emergency and putting into place what economists are calling the highest tariff since the early 1900s. Starting this morning, a 25% tariff is now in effect on all foreign cars. That could raise the price of new vehicles by more than $6,000. Then on Saturday, a 10% tariff on nearly all foreign imports. Roughly 60 countries, including some of America's closest trading partners, will face even steeper tariffs. A 20% tariff on products from the European Union, and an even higher 34% tariff on products from China. The president saying it's all in response to what other countries are imposing on the U.S.
If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America.
But experts warn those tariffs will only lead to higher prices on everything from groceries to clothing, iPhones to cars. Some analysts say in a worst-case scenario, it will cost close to $1,800 for every American, $7,200 for a family of four.
They're going to touch everything from going to the grocery store to going out to restaurants to even having to go to places like the movie theater.
Patrick Cumrow owns an...
I'm being so for real when I say this. The entire thing that holds American society right now together is treats and the affordability of treats and basic goods, okay? When that goes away, Americans, I think, which are otherwise incredibly servile and also brain rotted with peasant mindset, will actually riot, okay? I think Americans will riot like the French did. If their treats are that expensive, if their food is that expensive, and then paired up with like obvious layoffs that come through, recession, or the Great Depression, the greatest depression of all. Cheap commodity consumption is the real riot tax in this country beyond the marginal benefits that you can potentially claw through the welfare structure. I'm telling you, this is huge. But it's also a complicated situation because as someone who is not a free trade advocate, Okay. I'm in this unique mindset where I have to clarify some positions as I did yesterday, and I will talk about that as well. But of course, the MAGA cultists have basically started doing this. They've started. You do not need the new iPad. You do not need the new cell phone. You do not need the new video game console. You want them. There's a big difference. And if you look at the people whining about the tariffs, I challenge you to ask them how their lives have been affected in any way. This right here would lead to someone getting assassinated if it was like a leftist saying this under Joe Brandon. And some did. Some did say this. You know what happened to them? Joe Brandon lost. Kamala Harris lost. This is psychotic. They went with what's his face? The Vibe Session guy mindset so fast. Like the tariffs haven't even hit yet, and this motherfucker's already defending the price increases. Amazing. I love that. I love that so much. It is fucking hilarious. Okay? This has real first Trump era COVID is about to hit vibes. Okay? This moment right here is a very unique one. Donald Trump yesterday said this is a historical moment. I agree. It kind of feels like we are at the precipice of something very interesting. It kind of feels exactly the same way that I felt right around when people started taking COVID a little bit more seriously, when we were like, wait a minute, a lot of people are kind of dying. What's going on here? What is this? Is this an issue? That's what it feels like. Like it feels like we're at the precipice. Okay. Now, who knows what will happen? Well, I have some ideas, I have some opinions, and I will get to that. But the short and sweet of it all, free trade is ass. Free trade is horrible for the domestic manufacturing output, the labor in this country, and it's also predicated upon the consistent domination of the global South in an effort to have much cheaper slave labor elsewhere. Without that, maybe you could actually arrive at a theoretical free trade through currency exchange rates and things of that nature. But without imperialism, maybe you could have some semblance of free trade. Understandable, because then if everyone's material conditions are elevated to a degree where there's a price parity and there's a parity and an equilibrium, a benefits parity, if you want to call it that, then obviously there could be some semblance of free trade. But with imperialism, there is no real free trade. Free trade is, of course, a mechanism to displace the domestic labor and outsource it. And it was done by American business owners, people like Donald Trump. Make no mistake. When Donald Trump says these other countries are fucking us over, not anymore, he's lying to you. He's trying to hit a nationalist angle here, but it's the fucking American business owners that wrote the book. It's American capital that wrote the book. It's American capital that gladly shipped those jobs overseas. Make no mistake. When Donald Trump says, oh, it's China, they're fucking us up, he's lying. He is lying. It's ridiculous. Global trade is a necessity in this day and age, okay? I don't have an issue with that. I'm not a trade isolationist across the board. I am not a firm and committed believer in Marxist-Leninist Judaist ideology. Okay? Having said that, what Donald Trump did yesterday He said it was past presidents and our government, you idiot. No, you are the idiot because you don't understand. It is not our past presidents and our government. It is American capital owners that betrayed the American working class. Shut the fuck up. And listen to the adult in the room who's explaining to you. Because guess what? All of those free trade agreements would be meaningless if American capital owners were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to actually move manufacturing to become more competitive in the global marketplace. Move manufacturing overseas, offshore labor like that. Through the government and trade negotiations, ain't nobody made your father's boss move the factory to fucking China at gunpoint, okay? They did that voluntarily. They wanted that to happen. That's why they wrote the fucking rules. You are wrong. You're wrong. I'm shaking you. I'm shaking you like a baby until you are no longer wrong. And as is the case with American antitrust, as is the case with everything in the United States of America, it yielded tremendous profits for corporations, for the super wealthy, a mass consolidation of wealth and power at the tippy top. Having said that, it also came with cheap consumable items, cheap commodities. So consumers were servile. Consumers were made to not realize how devastating this was for their future, for the future of the economy. That's it. But make no mistake, it was entirely done by wealthy businessmen. They wanted it and they got it. So for Donald Trump to say this is previous administrations, this is China, you're wrong. It's the very same super wealthy people right now that are still in power and have become even more powerful in the consequence of this. Okay? Those were the villains that conducted this operation. And the American government led this process of global domination, led this process of international markets favoring the American consumer base in the short term, while directly displacing the labor force, which would have genuine material harm, genuine consequences for the American economy in the long term. And we are now living in the ashes of that. That's why I talked about the difference between looking at Chongqing 30 years ago in China versus now on a trajectory of growth and prosperity versus a place like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit, which is on a downward trajectory. Oh boy, why did he get banned? I don't know. He might have just gotten... No, he just got timed out by Toxic SJW, who didn't want to hear this person. But I untimed them out. Anyway. So, I need you all to understand cheap televisions and cheap consumer goods gave Americans the feeling of wealth. And because of endless domination overseas, specifically on the global south, unequal exchange of the global south, Americans, comparative to the living standards of the global south that were being dominated, were better off for sure. They were better off. Having said that, however, wealth is still relative domestically. You match it against those, you match those who have not against those who do have it, right? And in that process, I think wealth disparity grew tremendously in this country. And now we are in this predicament. And the only way out of this predicament, ironically enough, is to be China. Is to, efendim baba? Okay. Is to do China. Is to literally have industrial trade policy, nationalization of key sectors, boosting manufacturing, a federal jobs guarantee, a federal jobs program. That's how you're supposed to get out of this. with central planning. You're secretly excited about this all. Don't lie. No, I think that, I mean, this is a situation where I think Americans will break away from. This is a situation where I think Americans will break away from Donald Trump, regardless of what these fucking freakish, cultish losers are saying, because you can't make someone, through the cult mentality, you can't make someone believe that they have more money in their pocket. If they feel it, they feel it. Okay? Oh, dude, China like removed term limits for their premier, like what Xi Jinping did? Yeah, ironically enough, that question you're presenting is exactly what we are doing. We're doing the bad parts of Chinese governance and not the good parts of Chinese governance. America already had a surveillance state. It is accelerating. America, at the very least, cared about like a theoretical free speech. It's eroded. We're moving in the Chinese direction in all the worst ways, in all the wrong ways, and not moving in the Chinese direction in all the best ways, in the right ways. Even development, rapid urbanization, massive infrastructure projects, massive infrastructure expenditures. This is the problem. That is the issue. Because people ask, like, what's next? How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this rut? And the reality of the matter is you only get out of this rut with serious government investment. That's the only way to get out of this. You cannot rely on the capital owners that put you in this fucking place, put you in this problem to begin with. You cannot rely on the magnanimous nature of capital owners. You cannot bully them through tariffs to boost manufacturing domestically. That process will take far too long. You still have to have serious control over that transition. And Donald Trump seemingly is not interested in doing that at all. This is a problem. This is an issue. And I don't think people understand it. The reason why I bring up all this stuff is because I am not anti-tariff. I've never been anti-tariff. I've never been anti-trade protectionism. However, what Donald Trump is doing is not trade protectionism at all. And that is very important. That's important to understand. That's important to address, and we must address it, especially at a time when there's a lot of confusion because you got Sean Fain, who I love, who I admire, who I think is brilliant, revolutionary, and very very critical of the Trump administration, coming out and saying some of these tariffs are good. And I want to cover that. I want to cover the Democracy Now! Piece that famous Marxist professor Richard Wolff talked and responded to the Sean Fain statements on. I don't think Sean Fain took an L necessarily. I'll describe to you where he's coming from, why he's saying the things that he's saying, because the UAW's official position is that tariffs aren't bad. Free trade is bad. Okay? And we'll get to that in a second. But
Auto repair shop in Glendale, Wisconsin.
Will you have to raise prices for your customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
By how much?
I guess the minimum is going to be 25% on all parts.
He worries his business will suffer.
What we see is it kind of freezes.
Why are you not anti-tariffs? No. Make no mistake. I'm anti everything that Trump did yesterday. I am completely against it. And I will tell you why I'm against it. I'm saying I'm not against tariffs on principle. Like, I'm against free trade on principle, especially because as it stands currently, free trade is not actually free. It's not being done. It's not being conducted amongst equal parties. Free trade is conducted with the global south. It's called free trade. It's not so free. It fucking hurts the domestic manufacturers, and it hurts the domestic labor force. It only helps capital owners seek out higher profit margins, basically, by offshoring to countries that we have dominated, that are going to have a cheap industrial base, an industrial labor force as opposed to ours. It is a mechanism of extracting wealth once again.
Money freezes the willingness for customers to spend because they don't really know the future.
And in North Carolina, a state already hit hard from Hurricane Helene, some business owners say they have no choice but to raise their prices.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we will have to raise prices.
The president is confident the tariffs will bring jobs and manufacturing to the United States. Some auto workers applauding the move, but acknowledging that could take time.
I don't think it's going to be that long, but we have to be patient and let it happen.
The administration sending a warning to other countries not to retaliate.
This is not a negotiation, it's a national emergency.
Markets around the world tumbled with our allies denouncing the move, some even vowing countermeasures. Democrats quick to point out the president's campaign promise to lower prices for American families, but the president betting big here that this will bring manufacturing jobs.
You know what's funny about all this? If I'm a European leader right now, I'm fucking pissed because this entire global trade structure was directly designed by American businessmen and European businessmen as well, but specifically dominated by American businessmen. We built this complex web. We took advantage of this complex web for decades. And now Donald Trump's like, nah, I'm done. I want more in return from you. And the reasons why he's doing this are there's the suggestions that he's making, like what he claims he's doing this for, and what I know is the real reason why he's doing this. And I'll be very honest with you. It's clear. This is to try and decouple the West, specifically the United States of America, from China as the manufacturing hub of the planet. That's it. Okay? This is seen as a matter of national security. This is a national security concern from the perspective of the anti-China hawks in the American government. They understand that if China were to not be so restrained in the future one day and all of a sudden stop the flow of treats to the United States of America, especially as China has implemented initiatives to create secondary markets for themselves, specifically in Africa, developing Africa, and using that as a market to sell to. Like, these are all the Belt and Road Initiative. These are all important steps that the Chinese government has taken because of its grand design for global trade. In that process of China decided, yeah, you know what, we're just not, you're fucking us over. Okay, no more goods for you. It would collapse the United States of America. It would just collapse it. It would collapse the entire West. And I think that Donald Trump and his advisors recognize that fear and are actively trying to work against it. They're actively trying to bring back manufacturing and claw back some of that capability by force. The problem is they have no vision. They have no conviction. They're squishy and they're backed by capital. So how the fuck do you do that when you try to do that through the neoliberal private-public partnership that you only implement? You can't do it. You can't bring back manufacturing this way. The most you'll do is the CHIPS Act. Ironically enough, what Biden was doing was the extent of what you can do if your vision is stuck within the neoliberal framework. That's it. And without that, without even the CHIPS Act, for example, without actual investments into American manufacturing, there is no world where you can just simply rely on companies going, yeah, let's build our factories here in the United States of America. And this is a dangerous prospect for numerous reasons because it will backfire for a couple different reasons. The lack of vision, the lack of Chinese vision, Chinese style central planning vision within the American government will inevitably lead to massive failures. Why? Because without central planning in this process, You're simply relying on foreign investment coming back into the United States of America because they're too fearful of the tariffs or whatever, which is already on shaky ground to begin with. That's number one. Number two, when tariffs kick in, and let's say you do start building factories, you build the domestic manufacturing, you build your output. There is no guarantee that other countries will be purchasing. The trade deficit is what Donald Trump wants to fix. But there's no guarantee that the other countries are going to start purchasing these commodities from the United States of America once it's made in the United States of America. That's number one. Number two, you build the manufacturing, okay? You shut off trade internationally. You shut off trade from China that way because now you have an alternative. You have the domestic production, okay? Great, fantastic. You have the domestic production. No one is going to pay tariffs because no one is going to be purchasing foreign goods. So all of a sudden, the tariff faucet is closed. So it doesn't necessarily make sense on that front either. And more importantly, even in the short term, tariffs will, of course, lead to inflation. What is inflation? It is just a collection of commodities that you track. That's and the prices of said commodities increasing. That's what inflation is. Why? Why will this lead to inflation? Because all of a sudden, every good, what a tariff is, for those of you who don't know, is an entry fee that usually an American importer is paying. Okay? It is not paid by the other country. It's paid by the person who is bringing the good into the United States of America. It's an entry fee that you're paying the American government. So it's a tax that they're paying. But that tax carries over to you, the consumer. How does it carry over to you, the consumer? Because you pay the entrance, you pay the entrance fee for the good that you're shipping into the United States of America, and then that automatically increases the price of the thing that you're selling because they have to keep their profit margins the same. God forbid they eat away at their profits. They're never going to do that. So all of a sudden, the price of the good is higher. Okay? So this is the reason why tariffs, especially universal tariffs such as this one, when applied, turn into a regressive tax, a sales tax, a flat tax. What is a regressive tax? A regressive tax is a tax that harms the working poor a lot more than it harms the wealthy. Because what are you going to do? Not fucking purchase gas? What are you going to do? Not purchase commodities? Not purchase food? No, you can't do that. It's going to break your bank a lot more than it breaks the banks of a wealthy person, a lot more than it hurts the wallet of a wealthy person. It is a regressive tax. It's a sales tax. But because Americans hate the word tax, Donald Trump has been able to expertly apply a sales tax across the board without ever mentioning the word sales tax and how it will increase his taxes on the fucking working poor. That's it. So we're all going to get raises, right? No, you're not going to get a raise. You're probably going to lose your job, as a matter of fact, because as purchasing power diminishes because of inflation, companies will no longer be able to continue growing and be able to hire people, and inevitably will fire people. Layoffs will happen, which will accelerate the lack of purchasing power in the country. It will cripple the economy, and you will go into a depression. A great one! A Great Depression! And this has happened in the American past, in the not-so-distant American past, as a matter of fact. So on the one hand, I wanted to make sure that you understand that I am not necessarily anti-tariff. I am not necessarily anti-trade protectionism. I think trade protectionism can be good, especially when there is a domestic competitive industrial force that already exists in the country, so they can quickly accelerate production. For car manufacturers, for example, this very much exists. For the UAW, for the American car manufacturers, this is seen as beneficial. However, the issue here is, as it has happened in the past, when Donald Trump did tariffs before on other goods last time around, as tariffs have been implemented in the past, domestic manufacturers will also increase prices. So unless, and this is the last part of the problem that I was explaining earlier, unless there is price caps for American domestic manufacturers coming from a competent administrative state that actually wants to boost domestic manufacturing without making the American consumers incur that cost, they have to do price controls. But they will never do that. And this is precisely why historically, whenever tariffs happen, American manufacturers also increase their prices, as they did during COVID, regardless of supply and demand. This can only be done because of the tremendous amount of corporate consolidation that took place. Greedflation would not exist if there was at least a regulatory apparatus that stopped companies from behaving in these ways where they're like, well, you have more purchasing power. I'm just going to increase my prices. And it seems like, you know, you'll yell, but not at me. You'll yell at the fucking government. Great. Okay. My profit margins will go higher and higher year over year. It's fantastic. Do you understand the problem here? Do you understand why this will abso-freaking-lutely increase prices? Because not only does this immediately increase prices for all goods that you purchase that are being imported into this country and all the raw materials necessary for even domestically manufactured goods, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of that as well that will increase the prices of even domestically manufactured goods. But outside of that, domestic manufacturers will also increase their prices because now there's market demand for it. Now everyone else's prices are higher. Why should you make less profits? Because once you recognize that under capitalism, there is never, ever going to be a moment where those with the fiduciary responsibility of constantly improving their profit margins for their shareholders, people that are legally bound to constantly improve shareholder value, will always increase the profit margins to the best of their ability, always improve shareholder value to the best of their ability. Then you start recognizing that they will never have an incentive to reduce the profits. They will never actually keep prices stable unless they're forced to keep prices stable. And a country like the United States of America has never done that, with the exception of Nixon, I guess. And Trump is certainly not the guy, I think, that will do that. This is why prices are slated to fucking explode. That's it. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has said the market is going to boom. And boom it has. And boom it has.